is Tea with Botha.
It is 2025. We are celebrating the Women's Month in South Africa, paying homage to the heroic actions of women of 1956 who took on the mighty apartheid regime. We're asking the question today as to whether we, in regards to women's emancipation, women's freedom, have we realized it, have we achieved it, or that is still just a mirage? We're also looking back at the 30 years after the Beijing Platform of Action. And the question then arises is, does the Constitution or what's happening on the ground aligned with the lived experiences of women in 2025, especially their emancipation or their freedom? And someone to assist us to unpack this, to look at this, is none other than, and she calls herself a serial volunteer because she has worked with different organizations that focuses on human development, on youth, on women's empowerment. And that's none other than Kgomotso Buthelezi. And please help me in welcoming Kgomotso to assist us to unpack and look at where are we as a country insofar as women's emancipation is. Kgomotso, thank you so much for making time and welcome to Tea with Botha.
And Dr. Botha, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I like what you said, that you're a serial volunteer.
Yes.
What do you mean?
So when I say I'm a serial volunteer, it's really because I'm the type of person who believes in holding spaces for young people. So I have made it my life's mission to hold spaces for young people. So it doesn't matter where I am. I know that you know me through SAWID.
Yes, South African Women.
The South African Women in Dialogue.
In Dialogue, yeah.
Actually, I'm with Why SAWID, the Young South African Women in Dialogue. Which,
interesting, yeah?
Yes,
yeah.
Which is actually a commission in the mother body, which is SAWID.
Are you with Commissioner Tando?
Yes, Tando, Advocate Tando.
Yes.
That's
She's
the
very vibrant.
Very
vibrant.
Very.
I like
so,
it.
Yeah, me too. So that's really where I am. And I'm a serial volunteer because I've literally worked with so many other different organizations. I do quite a bit of work with organizations that work with young people, as well as organizations like SAWID. And you know, once you become part of SAWID, you're then connected to so many other organizations. But my volunteer journey actually started with POA, people opposing women abuse.
Yeah.
And I've literally just volunteered from there. I have a career for about 14, 15 years, just volunteering in different organizations.
And then tell us, your journey, more about your journey, why the interest in women's leadership and
Sure. Okay, so for me, right, and I like the fact that, when we started this interview, you spoke about women's lived experiences.
Yeah.
So just to backtrack.
Yeah.
I started my career as a facilitator, and I worked with Vodacom. And quickly after that, I realized that this is not necessarily the space that I wanted to be in. I'm very passionate about media, communications, conversations such as these.
Thank you.
Which is why when I got the call to come here, I didn't even think twice about it.
Thank you.
But I decided much earlier in my career to move from Johannesburg to Cape Town. And in Cape Town, I worked for an organization called Okuhle Media.
Okuhle.
Yes, Okuhle Media. And we did, I don't know if you remember Born Freeze. There's a series called Born Freeze that we worked on. We worked on a series like Which Way. It was basically a company that produced a lot of work for SABC2 and ETV. And I worked there as a training producer, and through my journey, I actually found myself in a position where I was hijacked. It was 2010. It was 2010, just before the World Cup. It happened on the 25th of May. I was hijacked. I was shot 8 times.
So did you hear about that experience?
And for me, coming from there, it took me 2 years to recover from that experience. And not only was I shot 8 times, but the perpetrators decided to drive over me with my car. So once they took the car, they then decided to drive over me. So I then had a a dislocated hip. And of course, it was a journey just to recover, but it took 2 years. And I think through the healing journey, it then became important for me to attach myself to something much bigger than myself. And that is where the volunteer work then came in, because it was 2 15, 16-year-old boys that decided that they were going to just
To violate you.
violate me. Do you get what I'm saying? And instead of being angry about what happened, a part of me felt sad that this is the South Africa that we find ourselves in. I found myself questioning, what kind of society are we building? What kind of young people are we building if you have 2 15, 16-year-old boys who are armed and dangerous and who feel that it is their right to violate a 21, 22-year-old. Do you get what I'm saying? So then for me, that became the driving force. And that is why I say to you, I'm a serial volunteer, not necessarily because it's nice to volunteer, but I believe that there's so many people that get shot and it's a bullet or it's 2 and they die. What's so special about this girl? Do you hear what I'm saying? Why does this girl get a second chance? And that is why, for me, the work that I do, it's not feel good work.
It's high risk.
This is purpose.
Purpose.
This is purpose. There's no way that I could survive something like that and I don't do anything about it. So that is why, for me, it's so important to be the peace advocate, to work with organizations like IJR, to work with SAWID, to implement the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, because for me, it's that lived experience, It's living through something like that. And at the end of the day, deciding, making a conscious decision that the work that I do will definitely be in holding space for young people, making sure that young people are represented, but making sure that the beneficiaries of all of these funds and all of these grants that are flying, that young people actually get to access them. And really, that is why I do the work that I do.
Interesting. And whilst Kgomotso, is that part of, the emancipation that your vision? Is it, can you tell? There's a bigger question that I want you and I to talk about. The liberation of women in this country. I said in my introduction, is it a mirage or is it real? Or is it happening? You think about policies, think about the practice, think about the laws that we have, the work that SAWI does. Do you think that when we talk about women's liberation or emancipation 2025, has that happened? Is it happening? Are there failures? Are there gaps?
Right. So for me, the question actually is much bigger than that. For me, it's, does the environment that we're in actually even, is it conducive for those policies, for the work to actually be channeled and for it to actually make a difference? Do you get what I'm saying? So yes, we've got the right policies. It's amazing because in the work that I do, we always find ourselves in a space where we know definitely South Africa is really good in putting together some really good policies, on black and white, the white papers, they all speak the right language, but for you to find a young person still struggling with just the freedoms of walking out in the street and being safe, dating and not getting killed. We need to really ask ourselves, do you get what I'm saying? Yes, we've got these beautiful policies, we've got the right frameworks, we're speaking the right language. Even when we get to spaces like the UN Women, if we ask a young South African professional to represent us, they'll definitely tick the right boxes. But when we speak to what happens grassroots, it's a totally different situation.
So what is on paper,
altogether.
the legal, what's written there, and to use our the word for this for today is, and the lived experiences. Would you say the gap is wider?
The gap for me is as wide as the economic gap between the rich and the poor.
In this country?
For me, honestly, that's really how it comes across. And again, this is informed by my lived experience, young women that I interact with, young people that I mentor. That is definitely it. There's definitely a huge disparity. And that is why I say, for me, the question is they're much bigger. Is the environment conducive?
And what do you mean by that?
So for example, we've got these, again, beautiful policies, but when it comes to the implementation, do we have the right people? Do we have the right skill set? Are we doing everything that we need to ensure that when it comes to implementation? I actually had a beautiful conversation. I attended it's a platform where people just get together from academics at Gibbs. And we were talking about neurodiversity. And what really came up was we have so many people in the country that are so focused on the academic space, right? So I remember one of the speakers saying that it's amazing how when neurodivergent people come into these academic spaces, the minute we start speaking this academic language, automatically they are cut off and they feel like they don't belong. But really, if you think about it, the real problem here is that we can have the academic space and the academic conversations, but when it comes to the implementation, a lot of the time you'll find that the people that need to implement aren't necessarily the people that draw the policies. Do you get what I'm saying? For example, case in point, you've got an architect. An architect will come up with what the building ideally should look like, right? But what the architect designs in comparison to what the builder says will work, two totally different things. So which is why you cannot discount the academic aspect of it, which is the architect, as well as the builder, the person who actually needs to put together the building itself to say, is this actually going to work? And a lot of the time you find that there are it's a give and take, The architect will have to do a bit of a trade-off with his design in comparison to what the builder says actually needs to get done and what is actually possible. So I think we're really finding ourselves in that sort of space where what we're putting together when we architect our policies and the frameworks in comparison to them actually being implemented, two totally different things. And that is why for me, it's always been such a bone of contention why we moved from technical schools to just our children going to university. It doesn't quite make sense because I believe that we all have our different spaces. And just because you're technically minded, it does not discount the value that you bring to the table. Do you get what I'm saying? So again, it speaks to a lot of different facets from education to how things are done. So for me, there's just really there's a disconnect.
Okay, disconnect. Yeah. Would you say also, when Kgomotso, there are issues around other barriers to all of what you're saying now towards women's emancipation? Are there barriers? I mean, your thoughts?
Definitely. So I got married at a very young age, for example, right? I've been married now for about 13 years. And it's just an amazing thing because in my household, we have no gender roles. We're very gender neutral in terms of how we do things. But it's amazing how things quickly change when our in-laws are in our presence. It's amazing how just it's an automatic thing that we now have to be very instead of being gender fluid in the household, like we don't have who cooks, who cleans, everybody does whatever it is that they need to do. But it's amazing how things just change the minute we've got external forces that come into our space.
Your mother-in-law?
Exactly, so definitely. And the barriers for me are exactly that. Do you get what I'm saying? The fact that my husband and I can have an agreement in terms of how we run our household. But whenever there are external forces, whenever the in-laws come in, then we need to have these gender roles.
They must change, yeah.
Everything, literally, but everything changes, So for me, the barriers actually start there. I remember these traditional gender roles. And the minute those come into play, for me, those bring the barriers. Because even as a professional, it's amazing that we'll be in a professional environment, but my male colleagues, for some reason,
they expect you to make tea for them.
They expect me to make coffee for them. It's an expectation. So how can there not be barriers? You understand? If naturally, that's what we just naturally gravitate towards. I used to be very politically active as a young person. And I remember a lot of my political counterparts would say, it's amazing how you talk about patriarchy when we're here, when we're in university and when it's amazing. But when you go back home, you know exactly the role
you play those patriarchal roles.
You have to. And these are modern boys that we're growing up with. These are people
well-educated,
but they'll say,
your role, sir. You know
your role. You can say whatever it is now.
When you arrive at home, you must cook.
You
must clean.
You
must look after the kids. This equality thing is theory.
Exactly.
Do it there in the streets.
Exactly.
Or
we
in those
do it
boardrooms.
Here and we entertain it here in this sphere. But the minute we go back home, you know your role. So how can there not be barriers?
Is that the reason why we still have high levels of gender-based violence in our country?
Sure. For me, again, from my lived experience, it's much bigger than that.
Say more.
It's much bigger, Ntate Botha, because it's amazing, né? How we'll sit and we'll dissect and say gender-based violence and more towards or biased towards females. But there's a reason why it's called gender-based violence. It's not necessarily gender in a sense that it's females. At least that's my understanding. It is a crime that is committed against you because of your gender, regardless of whether you're male, whether you're female, or whether you are gender fluid or you're non-conformist. But the fact that that crime is against you because and based on your gender, that for me says it's not just towards females. Yes, we are at the receiving end most of the time as females, but for me, that gender-based violence, it just simply means that there's a person or a system that has decided to violate you based on your gender. Now, taking that into consideration, for me, it is, there was a program years ago that was called Bring a Girl to Work.
Yeah, that was Cell C.
Do you remember?
Yes.
And I was quite young because I was still in school at that time, right? It was before I even matriculated. And I understand that we've got a system that has been unjust and very biased, né? And has made sure that women are always limited. And I completely get it. For example, I'm a parent. I had a fundamental issue with that sort of program, purely based on the fact that when I bring up my children, right, as I say, in my household, we're gender neutral. We don't have roles for boys or for girls. And this is a household that has 3 girls, 2 boys. We don't have those. But when we have programs that are particularly geared towards only the emancipation or only the liberation of the young girl. What are we saying to that boy? So I had my friends and I always sort of engage on topics like this. And the question for me was, if I'm being groomed to be a 21st century woman, where's my 21st century man? Where is he? Because surely we need to be on the same playing field. So if I'm speaking whatever concepts, we need to be able to meet each other on the same level, right? But when we have programs that want to elevate only young women, what then happens to the young men that should be our counterparts?
Please answer that question.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, because you're a young woman who's passionate about women's empowerment, youth development. What is your answer?
So for me, this is the thing. It's when we talk about gender-based violence, and again, it's from my lived experience. The fact that I matriculated, I went straight into work and studied, but it was very difficult for me to meet young men that spoke a similar language, young men that met me at my level. Now, if I, for example, am to date a young man and we don't speak the same language, and I am particularly maybe more advanced in terms of exposure and, what happens to to that sort of relationship? You know? I always said it's amazing because I found that young boys my age, I found that they were quite jealous of the fact that when we were working, I would most probably get the promotion first. I'd most probably get the permanent position first, because that's just how the system has been built to ensure that women are elevated, right? Because there's a disparity. There's the gap between men and women. But the way in which we're doing it, is it conducive? Is it taking us further as a society? Or are we finding ourselves in a position where you've got a 21-year-old who happens to be an account manager and they've received that promotion and her counterpart is reporting to her, and it's purely based on the fact that she's gotten that position because she's female?
So you're saying, what are you saying, Kgomotso, that it creates what it continues to become part of the...
You remember we spoke about the conducive environment. So we've got these beautiful policies, right? But the environment that we're building,
may work against.
Is it there to advance the growth and the level playing field for young women, young men, for youth? Or in the implementation, are we finding ourselves in a space where it is actually counterproductive?
I hear you.
So for me, it's really that. So when we look at even the gender-based violence and the staggering numbers against young women, I mean, I think just the other day, just a week ago, there's a young lady who also found herself becoming a victim, stabbed multiple times by a male counterpart. So the question for me really is, it's much bigger. It's not just are we ticking the boxes? It's much bigger than are these policies working? But we really, really as a society need to ask ourselves, as we're implementing and as we're trying to narrow this divide, are we doing it in the right way?
Yeah, and what do you think, now that you talk about, how do we do this? Is there a way that we can, as society, make sure that men become allies? And what do we do? Is there work that can be done around that space? How do we do that? Where in some quarters men may feel alienated, men may feel that we're just appendages. We are useless. And I see we are in the month of August, and I see a lot of violence, particularly this month. Whether is it a backlash, whether it's in response, and what's your thinking around? Are there things that we should do when Kgomotso to make sure that men become allies towards the women's emancipation?
I definitely think that there's definitely a space. There's definitely a space for that. It's amazing because I actually had a tiff on social media with a gentleman who was perpetuating a particular narrative.
Was it on X?
No, it was on Instagram.
Instagram. What was the tiff about?
Instagram. So we had a tiff because there's a picture that was posted, right? And it's these two young women dressed in white, wearing very short dresses. And the comment was, what I took from the comment was that, you see, if you want to have a future, these are not the type of women that you engage with, And I was taken aback, because again, I'm very conscious of what we paint, especially on social media. And I'm coming to your point of how do we make men allies? Because for me, it's perpetuating those narratives. For me, it's if men in themselves, because the question for me was, my son, who is 16, 17, is going to see that comment on social media. And automatically in his mind, it's going to be, oh, so these type of women. You get what I'm saying? And he meets a girl, he's triggered because that's what's being perpetuated on social media. I wouldn't want to look the other way and not say anything about this narrative that is being perpetuated. And so I commented, and I think that's really where the opportunity is, where if we see something wrong, let's engage on it. Let's not look the other way. And I found that with the years that I've been in these spaces, that a lot of the time, we bring up young girls very differently. I remember there's an author who actually wrote about it who said, we teach young women to act in a different way in comparison to what we teach young men, A lot of the time, you'll call out a young woman for dressing in a particular way, but we never call out young men for saying particular things, perpetuating particular narratives. So for me, the allyship comes in where the older generation or the more mature within this other gender, this male gender.
Okay. You're not an ageist, yeah? You're not an ageist.
Not at all.
You're not talking to me or about me as an older man. Yeah?
No, I'm just saying. The more mature, the men with the wisdom.
Yeah.
Those gems of wisdom.
The pearls of wisdom.
Yes, those pearls.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that these younger ones actually get them. And I think for me, that's where the allyship comes in. Where
we mentor them.
If you're able to, as a man that has run these streets, if you're able to just impart that knowledge.
It's over a year since we started the channel Tea with Botha. It has been an amazing journey. It contributed to amazing. There are 3 important things that you can do. One of them, important one, the first one is subscribe. If you subscribe, you're actually sending a message to YouTube that what you are doing is important, is valuable. The second that you should do is, whilst you are watching this video, press the like. Very important. Thirdly, is also important is this video, as you like it, as you subscribe, you also share with friends, family, and colleagues.
Let's not let our children be brought up by social media, by the internet, you know. Let's really have that information exchange, you know. Let's have those dialogues. And again, with Saweed, we usually hold like quite a bit of dialogues, you know.
The
And I think,
intergenerational ones.
and I think there's really a space for men to have those
But do you find Saweed, South African women in dialogue? Do you find Saweed doing a lot in engaging men?
Men, I wish we did. I wish we did a lot more. But again, as the name itself says, South African women in dialogue.
Yeah.
You know.
So you're not dialoguing. You're not dialoguing with men. You're not dialoguing with men.
So maybe there's an opportunity there for us to have more dialogues with our male counterparts. But I really do feel that the intergenerational conversations
are
very important. And it's amazing how once you reach the age of 65, this system in itself deems you
useless.
Thank you. And I think maybe as a mature gentleman, you'll also know that unfortunately
soon I'll be 65.
And that's
it makes you redundant.
It makes you redundant. But for me, it's how do we find ecosystems and how do we create ecosystems where the older generation have that space.
You tap into that.
And they have, because I mean that's a knowledge system. And how do we just make it redundant because economically the system says after 65 you are no longer, you get what I'm saying?
Productive.
Do you get what I'm saying? For me, there's so much more because, you know, it's amazing because so in my mind, right, I'm always thinking, and I say, as I'm aging, I'm looking forward to having grandkids. I am actually looking forward to having grandchildren. And my main reason why is because I really want to impart this knowledge, you know? I really want to sort of take it back to
your lived experiences.
And just because you are 25 and you have a child, spiritually doesn't mean that you're of an age to actually bring up children. But unfortunately, in this system that for me, I find may be a bit unconducive, is that you're 25, you have a child, and automatically it's your problem. But for me, it's where the grandmothers, where the aunts, where the
grandfathers,
where the uncles? Because if you go back to Africans, the African systems, the indigenous knowledge systems,
interesting,
you'll know and understand that it's a village that brings up a child. So when we talk about these issues and these problems that we're having, you know, I think as African people, we're trying so hard to live in a Western system with Western rules
and values
and forgetting the African indigenous knowledge systems, you know.
The pearls of wisdom, you said.
Do you get what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with evolving. There's nothing wrong with maturing and growing as a species. However, I don't think that it's actually working to our advantage to let all of those go, because at the end of the day, here we are finding ourselves in situations.
That means the space that the government or corporate, these institutions, for them to make sure that they break these barriers. That's what you're saying. Your organization and others that you work with, other than Saweed, is that it's going to be important for you to how to bring men into these dialogues. How to make sure that corporate, these barriers that you and I were talking about, how do they make sure that we have programs to break those barriers? Am I right?
100%. 100%. And I think, again, when we talk about the allyship, it's really about us championing these conversations. So a lot of the times, it's amazing how we look outside for answers. So for me, allyship is in the space that you're in. I was listening to Nina Simone, and apparently her mother said to her, bloom where you are planted. So she wanted to go to New York as an artist. And her mom or her grandmother said to her, just bloom where you are planted. And she started her career from wherever it is that she was. And again, for me, it's why don't we bloom where we're planted. So in the spaces that we're in the boardrooms that we occupy, in the board meetings, in the
in the NGO,
in the NGO,
in the government.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
In the AGM meetings, in the not just policy making, but in the strategies that we adopt in corporate spaces, in organizations. That's for me where the allyship actually comes in, because if we're able to influence strategies, if we're able to influence policy, that's the role that we need to play. I actually attended a memorial. I think it's for Rosa Adams, and there was a memorial that was done for her at UNISA last week, and the main speaker, very powerful woman. Her name escapes me right now, but I loved what she said in her speech. She spoke about, it's amazing how, as women, we always gravitate towards saying, I'm the first to champion A, B, C, D, and E. I'm the first to become a pilot. I'm the first to become a drag master. I'm the first. And she says, we didn't fight for you to be just the first. We didn't fight back in the day for you to just occupy that space and have personal achievements. You are put in that space to champion and hold the door open for others. We love the fact that you're the first, but we don't want you to be the first and the only. You know? So again, it's that. It's us as women owning these spaces. So there's no way that we can talk about allyship with men or the other gender. You get what I'm saying? Without us as women ourselves ensuring that there's allyship amongst us, because we can only we're the ones that are responsible. You know, Sawit says we're the ones we've been waiting for.
Is that the Sawit slogan?
Yes.
Interesting. We're the ones that we're waiting for.
We're the ones that we've been waiting for. So if we want the other gender to rally with us and to have the allyship, and aren't we the ones who are supposed to define and ensure that the path is charted, and we're the ones that are actually ensuring that what we want to achieve actually happens. And then everybody else can join us. But for as long as we remain divided, then how do we then ask anybody else to support us?
I like that one. Are there specific qualities that you think young women in the 21st century moving forward that they possess, that you think that you have walked this path, you have traversed this journey? Do you think that there are these specific qualities that I, as Kgomotso Buthelezi, I think that young women, as they navigate their space in the world, both in private, in corporate, in government, that they need to possess?
They need to pay it forward.
They need
to pay it forward.
So
what I mean is, there's nothing that is as important for me personally in my journey, such as acknowledging the ones that were here before us. You get what I'm saying? So there's a lady from DERCO that we usually have conversations with, and she says to me,
"Is that Department of International?"
Yes.
DERCO, yeah.
So I got training as a mediator from DERCO. That's actually where my journey actually started when it comes to mediation and
in violent risk areas.
No, so we were trained. We did remember. There's a program called Peace Rooms. So we were Peace Rooms. This was the implementation of the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. We worked with IJR, organizations like DERCO, SAWIT was also involved, and so we got the training to become mediators from that.
You work with
from
Professor Cheryl?
Yes, yes, Professor
good.
Cheryl.
Yeah, Cheryl, yeah.
Yes. Actually, everything that I know about the National Action Plan, I learned from her. The National
Amazing
Action Plan
woman,
on
amazing.
women, peace and security, I learned from her.
She's actually an embodiment of what peace and security.
Security, exactly. So now I forgot my trail of thought.
I'm sorry to do this to you.
What were we talking about again?
I mean, the qualities that you think
The qualities, yes. So I was talking about paying it. I was talking about paying it forward, and in a sense, it's recognizing people like Professor Cheryl and the role that she's played, and understanding that's a vessel of knowledge that I can tap into. You know, when we talk about women like Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, understanding the role that
Dr.
she played.
Naledi Pandor.
Understanding the roles that they play. Do you get what I'm saying? It's amazing. I'm actually going to come back to Dr. Naledi Pandor. Just remind me.
I'll remind
but for
you.
me, it's amazing how, as young women, because we are born in this 21st century and we've got access to social media, we've got access to the internet. I mean,
you're privileged.
We're privileged. And I mean, like I always say, like for us millennials, the corporate industry was never ready for us because we grew up in an era, we've got the best of both worlds. We grew up in an era where there was no social media. And then there was social media all of a sudden. And we had access to the internet. But because we've grown up in this modern era, for some reason, we don't respect the people that came before us because we come in with this mentality that
we know it all.
Thank you. And I think the biggest trait that you need as a young leader, as a young woman, is to always understand that it's very difficult to fill a cup that is already full. So there are a lot of things that we need to unlearn. That we open up space to learn.
I find it deep. You find the cup.
You can't fill a cup that's already full. So there's a lot of things that we need to unlearn as young people. A lot of things that we need to understand that, yes, we may think that we know, but we actually don't. And a lot of that information and a lot of that wisdom sits with the older generation. And I think we need to give them their space. And we need to understand that in order for us to be elevated, we actually need to go to them, give them their flowers, learn from them.
That's when you said I should remind you about Dr. Naledi Pandor.
Exactly. It's like
Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma.
I was
Helen Zille.
Helen Zille.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. With Dr. Naledi Pandor, I found myself questioning. I remember that there was the whole war I think it was in Russia, and there's a delegation that was sent. And at the time, or she still does most probably, she's the Minister of International Relations, and she was not included in that delegation. I found that such a contrast, like in comparison to you were asking earlier, is it a mirage? Or is there emancipation actually there? So when something like that happens and the president then goes to speak to another president, the minister at the helm and who is responsible for international relations
is left out,
is not even in the delegation. I saw just men there.
And that's the problem we have with, is it a mirage or is it emancipation? Is it real?
That for me then says, then we really need to question, So for me, I think at the end of this conversation, I'm left with more questions than answers, because we said we're navigating and we're still trying to find out, are we there yet? And I think as we've spoken, I'm actually left with more questions than I do have answers.
If you were to, one piece of advice, we're not Kgomotso too. Here's a young woman listening to us, struggling about identity, about her own navigation. I mean, she's struggling, she's sitting here, she's watching TV with Botha. I hope she's able also to like us, she's able also to, to subscribe. One piece of advice, Kgomotso, what do you say to, she's probably in India, she's probably in Engqutu. She's probably that's where your husband comes from, am I right? Engqutu.
Yes.
She's probably some Mkanduli. And she's where I come from, she's in Sharkville. She's listening to you. One piece of advice.
Sure.
To say, how does this woman empower herself? How does she accelerate her own empowerment?
You know, Dr. Botha, at the backdrop of everything that we've discussed, it becomes such a challenge to give advice like that, especially because we live in a society that says, the first question that I was asked when I was shot, so as I came to, and I've got nurses around me and everybody faffing, the first question I was asked was, did you fight? Why did you fight? You know? Because my instinct says, if I'm to advise any young person, it would be live in your truth. Fight for what you know is right. But it's very difficult to do that in a system, in a society that teaches women on how to ensure that they shouldn't fight for them to make sure that they are safe. So if you're being robbed, just give it, hand it over. If you are being abused, Rena didimala ubua thata,
You talk too much.
You understand.
You're too ascetic.
What were you wearing? You got raped, but what were you what were you doing out there? Kanako eo?
What were you doing in that tavern? Why were you drinking his alcohol? What did you expect him to do?
So how do you advise?
I'm asking you.
Exactly. How do I advise? When the entire society
And the system
simply says, I mean, you're told as a woman what to, how can I put it, avoid, rather than being equipped with the skills to speak up for yourself, to fight for yourself, then how do you advise a young person? Because as I say, my instinct is live in your truth. Fight for what you know is right. Like Zosbini Twinsie said, we made this,
Miss South Africa and Miss World.
And she said, young women need to take up space, and that's really what needs to happen. We need to take up space, but the environment, is it conducive? Because every single time we say to young women, take up spaces, you've got another woman who's trying to close the door, another woman who's trying to ensure that she needs to and she must be the first and only.
So, Kgomotso, you shared earlier with us, you went through a near-life experience being shot by young men who, when you look back, would have made you to be angry, to be bitter, to be full of hatred, but you chose the other options. I mean, of not being bitter, of not hating. And I want to ask you as to there are perceived or real gender wars between men and women. What's your advice? I mean, based on your lived experience, how do we deal with these gender wars between men and women?
It's a challenging one. And again, because it is perpetuated by society, unfortunately, because of the patriarchal system, because of just how we perceive the roles, the gender roles between men and women, the wars will always they'll always be there. For me, I guess with my experience, I didn't find it would do anything for me as a person. It did not resonate with the person that I am challenging myself to be. And that is why for me, it didn't make sense, because these were young people. Something must have happened. And that is why I say I make sure that I'm always standing in the gap for young people, purely because for me, that didn't make sense. For me, it said something must have gone wrong in their lives. So when I go through something, it's very difficult for me to paint an entire gender with the same brush. And maybe it needs to start there, where let's look at problems as human problems, as not necessarily as a gender problem. You hear what I'm saying?
I do. So we move away from men are dogs.
Let's move away. Exactly. For me, it's we have a problem as a society. This is not a man or woman problem. This is a human problem. And I think if we look at things like that, then it then becomes easier for us to find the solutions, because it's not related to a particular man did this to me. I mean, it would have been very easy for me to be on the extreme when
And
it comes
hate
to
all men.
Exactly. It was very easy
And
for
say
me.
men are trash.
I've got all the ingredients, 8 bullets, ran over, 2 years to recover. I've got the perfect recipe.
To be bitter, to be hateful, to be revengeful, all of those.
Exactly. But for me, I saw this as a human issue. We've got a human problem. It's not a man or a female issue.
And the beauty now is you're raising boys, am I right?
Exactly.
How many?
With 2 boys.
2 boys.
That I'm raising. Exactly. 2 boys that I'm raising. So imagine if I'm bitter. How would I then be able to ensure that, they're brought up correctly, for us not to have gender roles, as I'm saying, for my kids to all know that equal playing field. It would be impossible. So I think maybe it comes down to that. Really looking at these issues as, and not discounting the fact that there's a war against women. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
There is a war, particularly against women.
And their bodies.
Thank you. We need to look at the problem as a human issue, something that we can all contribute when it comes to finding the solutions. And for me, it begins with creating the environment where both young men, young women are able to thrive. And we don't look at one gender over another. Because the competition that we breed, it's like sibling rivalry. If your parents have a favorite, what usually happens? So we cannot favor one gender over another, even though we're trying to ensure that we are addressing the atrocities of the past. For me, it's the implementation. It's the way in which we decide to do it. So we cannot even make young boys think that as a woman you have an advantage. We cannot make young women think as a boy you have an advantage. The playing field should be level. And I guess it's going to take quite some time for us to get there, but there's certain strides, there's certain things that are being implemented. But we just really need to question how we're doing it, because we don't want to send the wrong message.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Difficult.
Very.
I hope you have been able to journey with us and to, as we talk about this not so easy discussions or topics around the emancipation of women. We talk about, 30 years into our democracy, the laws that we women are faced with, and the GBV, femicide, where we are into our democracy. Is real emancipation? Has it happened? Has it not happened? You would, to use the famous, you be the judge. As you drank tea with us, I hope that Kgomotso has been able to tease out these challenges that are not easy. I think she has been able for me, where I'm sitting, she has been able to give us some tools as to how do we navigate, how do we traverse this difficult journey. Hope you would continue to subscribe. You'll continue, to use that to like us, so that YouTube realizes or acknowledges that the work that we do here with Botha is so valuable. Continue to spread the message. Continue to share this work. Once again, Kgomotso, thank you so much for being here, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to, in many years to come, how you rose, your children, especially the boy child you spoke about.
Yeah.
Once again, join me in thanking Kgomotso Buthelezi for her participation and for pearls of wisdom that she shared with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Botha.
Thank you.
This is Tea with Botha.